think what Dom and I are really conscious of is we're really conscious to make sure that our investments and our time, we're actually adding value rather than just being another voice which is just going to be agreeing with everybody. We want to actually come in and be impactful with what we're doing.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we feature top leaders on how they measure success in their business and life. Now, let's learn from their experiences.
RJ Cox here. I'm the host of the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. This episode is brought to you by 40 Strategy. 40 Strategy is built to make strategy work for small to medium-sized businesses and organizations by helping them design a world-class strategic plan, but more importantly, help keeping them accountable to actually get it done. To learn more, go to 40strategy.com. If you haven't already, we highly encourage you to pick up Amazon bestseller Lost at CEO. It is a great way to help you find a better way to do your strategic facilitations as well as get that plan done. You could find it at amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, and Audible as well. We're very excited for our podcast we have today with Elliot and Dom Chapman. It's always fun to have two particular guests at the same time, and they are brothers and co-founders of Chapman Capital. They share what it's like to acquire and sell businesses. They love to grow world-leading agencies, and they invest in exciting teams worldwide. One of their companies, Social Chap, was born out of the frustration of trying to find good marketing agencies in the B2B space, and both of them have been running their own B2B business for the last 5 years, from startups to management consultancies. And with that, I want to welcome Elliot and Dom. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, why don't you choose? Describe in a bit more detail about your business, and let's start from there.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little, an intro. You mentioned Social Chaps there. So Social Chaps was exactly as you described. It was born very much out of frustration. I was running a IT management consultancy, which was the family business. Dom was running a SaaS product, a tech platform, and we were sharing an office in Bournemouth, which is a little town on the south coast of England, and just both had real bad experiences of working with marketing agencies for varying different reasons. But it was a common theme that kept on popping up over a period of, 6 to 9 months. We sort of brought up the conversation, and Dom went about his little tech ways to try and create a system, which was essentially a lead gen system, what was version 1 of what is now Social Chaps. Where we are now with Chapman Capital, Social Chaps put us in a position where we were presented with an offer from private equity to be acquired, started going down that route and decided that it wasn't for us, which we think is the right decision. Sort of 2.5, 3 years on, it is the right decision, but it felt painful at the time, walking away from what would have been a life-changing amount of money. But the idea of what they were trying to do, which was bring together a group of digital agencies, we really liked it. We had a commercial model in Social Chaps, which was purely retainers. We were building unbelievably healthy pipelines for all of our clients, but never actually realizing the upside. So with all this information being presented to us, we decided to acquire and invest in firstly our clients, but also external digital agencies as well. So we kicked off that journey sort of halfway through 2022, and we're now a portfolio of 6, which is a combination of majority investments and minority investments, which will work towards majority investments or work towards other exits. So there are a number of different sort of deals that we've struck in the last coming up to 2 years. But it's been a bit of a wild ride in the last couple of years of very much out of our comfort zone, trying to push each other to achieve more and grow our portfolio.
Do you have anything to add to that? I'm kind of curious from your perspective.
No, I think Elle covered it well.
Thank you.
Yeah, not often I give you a compliment, so yeah, make the most of it. I definitely think specifically over the last year, we've really ramped up on everything that we're doing. And I think that the reason why we've had success in the space that we've had in terms of investments and acquisitions within agencies is that we understand the agency model. We've been running our own agency for 4 years before this. So going into founders and co-founders where they're trying to break through the 1 million mark, or they're trying to step out of the business and try and make it a business that doesn't rely on them, is quite difficult as an agency, where we understand that, and we've taken steps to do that multiple times. So we sort of have some of those frameworks in place to support agency owners. So it's not just a straight investment or an acquisition. We've got frameworks we have, and we sort of try and implement in those agencies as well. So it's I'd say it's more of a unique offering in terms of not just here's some cash, go and grow, because a lot of the time agencies don't need that. They need that strategic support.
So I'm curious, as you've been continuing to expand in your investments, strategically, are you trying to stay within a certain vertical niche in terms of different markets that you're supporting? Or are you, doing or are you seeing it as more of a vertical integration, right? Where you can have some of these different companies to support across the way. So what is your approach, or is it different for every single one?
So it is different for everyone. We are taking it deal by deal. I think when we're looking at acquisitions, we look at it in a slightly different way than just what they're offering. It's not only what are they offering, what's the value add, but also what are their weaknesses. So for example, if they're not very strong at building a pipeline, or they haven't got very strong leadership, they haven't got maybe a 2 to 3 year exit plan, but they're really strong when it comes to the client delivery and the client retention, they're just not very good at that acquisition, that early acquisition part. They don't know, how to maybe put together SOPs or standard operating processes or procedures, things like that. We look at what their weaknesses are to see if we are actually going to be a good fit, rather than this is the service and this is the problem that we're solving. So we're looking at it, I wouldn't say it's radically different, but just I think what Dom and I are really conscious of is we're really conscious to make sure that our investments and our time, we're actually adding value, rather than just being another piece of, another voice which is just going to be agreeing with everybody. We want to actually come in and be impactful with what we're doing.
I'm curious, as you start, you have 6 different investments, and if you continue to expand that, there starts to be your own scaling challenge, right? Of having different investments. So how are you seeing to help manage that, and how often are you keeping up with the portfolio companies to assure that they're driving in the right direction?
I'd say we're just starting to hit the scalability issues now. What we've done is we've started to recruit a little team. So I think we've got a team of 4 full-time, and then we've got sort of freelancers who work on an hourly rate as and when we need them. And that can be anything from sort of PA services to tech support, whatever it is. Where me and Elle spend our time is starting to become very, very important. On a weekly basis, on a Monday morning, we sort of go through each meeting and scrutinize if we actually have to be there. Can this be an email? Can someone else take it? Can someone else pick it up? And in terms of continuing to scale up, I think it's how do we share our knowledge down onto the team and empower them to be able to make decisions without us having to be there for every specific decision, which again is a difficult thing. It's letting go and acknowledging that they may make mistakes or not make the decision that we would make, but it's at the end of the day, it's the decision they've made, and we've put the trust in them, which is similar to sort of stepping away as an agency owner as well. I think they're quite similar. So yeah, it's almost like we've scaled the agency, we've stepped away, and now we're sort of doing a similar but in a different space. So it's interesting to see where we take it. There are a lot of similarities. We've scaled the agency, we've done that part, we've stepped away. It is essentially the same thing. We have done it before. I think where we are now, as Dom was saying, we're sort of hitting critical mass with our time, and we're now at a point where we've got to be quite ruthless with our time and what we're actually involved in. Because a lot of the time, particularly early on in a relationship or an investment, you attend as much as you can because you want to be seen to be adding the value, you want to be seen to be, really, really keen. A lot of it, you don't need to be there. You actually, I think where Dom and I are at, to get maximum value, we need to be only attending things where we're genuinely needed and our input is genuinely needed. So for example, when we first acquired Speak on Podcasts, December 2022, we were in absolutely every single meeting. We had to radically change the mindset of the company. We had to radically change a lot of the processes and how the company was performing. Fast forward 12 months, and we're in 2 meetings a week. And they are a team meeting so that the team have still got visibility of us, which is really, really important. And then a leadership meeting, which the leadership team report essentially to us how the company is performing and if they've got any concerns.
And there will then be ad hoc things that we jump into. It is doable. I think the trick is to not make too many investments at the same time where you're going to be doing similar jobs and being pulled from pillar to post. But if they are strategically placed throughout the year and they're spread out, we've also got the joy of there's two of us, which makes a massive difference because I know how Dom thinks, Dom knows how I think, and whilst we have slightly different skill sets, we would essentially be saying the same thing. I can't remember a meeting or a big decision where Dom and I haven't been aligned, particularly with the investments. There's been other stuff, obviously, and it's normal and natural to disagree on some things. But they're sort of where the challenges are, but they're challenges that we've overcome in the past.
One of the challenges I see when I'm working with portfolio companies is as you're looking at a team that you're with, I view as people, process, and systems, right? You have to make sure you have the right people in place to scale. You need to have processes. It sounds like a lot of times you're coming in and putting in processes, right? They're coming in, and then you have actually systems you have to put in because they're using Excel still or whatever, or maybe antiquated, older systems that don't work as well anymore. The people stuff is often, I think, the biggest challenge, right? Is you have somebody who's worked, I'm just going to keep this simple. Let's say they're working at $1 million company and in terms of turnover revenue, but now you want to scale them to 5 million. And the skill sets that's required to get to 5 is significantly different often. Yep. So how do you help coach, scale, mentor, identify, and then also when do you know you have to make a change with your portfolio companies because you're seeing that they're having the inability to scale on their own?
Really, really good question. One that we've been through in the last 6 weeks or so in terms of personnel. So I'll let Dom talk about processes and systems because that's more his bag. But in terms of people, you're right. When you come in, I think it's really, really important that you set down what is the new standard, whilst also, and this is the challenging part, whilst also putting people at ease as to why you're there. Because with any acquisition or investment, there is a level of uncertainty amongst the staff. So there is this really fine balance to put people at ease, but also raise the bar, because essentially that is on all the investments, that is what we're doing. So we do that in a number of different ways. We do that in a sort of a series of presentations to say, this is what we now expect. This is now how we're going to measure performance over the next 3 months. And again, it's really, really important that you're not overwhelming people and saying, this is what we're going to do in the next 5 years. Because the truth is, I don't think people care about what the next 5 years look like. What people want once they've just been bought out and there's new owners, they want, is my job safe? And what do the next couple of weeks look like? So we break that down into, this is what our goal is over the next 3 months. Everybody's job is safe. We're not going to come in and rip things apart. We've bought you or we've invested in you because we love what you do. This is what I'm going to do. This is what Dom's going to do. And this is what we expect of you. So we're holding ourselves to the same standards. And that's really, really important to sort of level the playing field from just a psychological perspective, so that it's not you're coming in imparting new things onto a team. It's just creating this level playing field. And then in terms of coaching that and how do we sort of make sure it does actually happen, it's regularly reporting back on those KPIs and giving live feedback on, this is why we didn't achieve it, or this is why we did achieve it. The key for me is in the first 3 months, make those goals really, really achievable so you quickly get the team on side. And I know that sounds a little bit stupid, maybe, but it is important. When you're coming into a new team, you've got to win their trust quickly. And if you do what you say you're going to do and you achieve what you say you're going to do, and they can see then a pathway, it's very, very, it's much easier to get people on side. And then from 3 months, you can then extend that out for the next 6, or we did the next 9. So here's what we're going to do for the remainder of the year. And again, break it down into small chunks, make it achievable. The one incident where we had somebody who just could not keep up with the demands of what we were trying to do, we gave it 9 months. We didn't want to do something slapdash. There was several different opinions that we wanted to take into account, largely the leadership team. And somebody leaving a company is often inevitable. It may never feel that way, but things come and go, whether it's whatever it is, right? Whether it's business or life, whatever, it is life. So you then just got to make sure that you're delivering that in the most compassionate way, and you're trying to deliver that in a way that the person can actually digest what has happened. And with this there were regular check-ins, there were regular, you're not quite performing where we need to. This went on for 4 or 5 months. And then the final part to that is, once you've let them go, is delivering that to the team. So what we're trying to do is create a level of transparency so that the team can actually understand why we're making decisions. And that's because of the past of what has happened. And you've got to, in my opinion, as a leader, I think you've got to try and create as many human sort of elements to you as possible, rather than just popping yourself on a pedestal. So that's what we did.
I appreciated you talking through that. And one of the things I kind of wanted to note on that is it appears like your processes, two things I really liked what you said. Number one is you try to create early quick wins by not setting super high bars early on to create success. And I'm actually a really big fan of that. It's funny because I battle between, you want to create stretch goals for the longer term because you want to change your habits, right? If you just say we're going to grow 5% this year, nobody can change their habits, right? But if you say we're going to grow 30% or 50% or 100%, or depending on the size of your organization, you have to change your habits. But the other thing is, it appears like, based on those who you're working with, because you consistently are regularly checking in with them, there shouldn't have been a surprise, right? If at the end of the period of time, they're no longer there. And actually, in many cases, it might feel like a relief, right? Because they're probably feeling that pressure because they're at the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's time for them to find somewhere different, right? Where they're going to have more success in the future.
And that is absolutely fine as a scenario. That scenario, whilst it is not nice delivering that news, you're spot on. It was not a surprise for anybody. Sometimes we need to be pushed to realize that there is something better out there. And this is the truth. If you're waking up and you're unhappy in what you're doing, then what's the point? What is the point? And it was evident in this particular scenario. They weren't happy, and I don't know whether that was work related or not, but ultimately something had to change. And I hope for them that they're onto something bigger and better. In terms of the processes, Dom, did you want to just overlay what I said with the process step of what we do?
I think when we come in, it's very much assessing, what documentation you have down. How is that consumed within the team? Is it searchable? Is it actually usable? And I think what happens a lot when small businesses are sort of built from the ground up from a founder is a lot of the knowledge is held in their head, and then it's just sort of, say you sit in an office, it's just knowledge share across the office, just explaining to someone, which doesn't create a scalable system. Or, if you want to recruit not someone locally, it makes everything a little bit more difficult. So implementing systems and processes that are, one, simple to use, but I think the most important thing is not necessarily exactly what software or system it is. It's just if it's used by the team and used on a daily, weekly basis. And for me, it's always resorting back to it. So what I get a lot, and still get this to this day, is someone asking me a question that I know I've sort of done a tutorial or a standard operating procedure on. And instead of just explaining that to them, it's asking them, right, have you done the relevant checks before coming to me or someone else on the team to ask them the question that, you may already have the answer to. And it's just creating that culture, which isn't like, it's not my job, but it's like, it's your job to find the answer and, understand that before going and wasting other people's time. Yeah, don't have too much more on. I mean, you can dig into the systems and processes if you want. I think it's a lot more straightforward than the people stuff, which I think we all agreed it can be a lot more complex.
No, I think that's fair. I appreciated the insights, and I think that, once again, the people side is typically the more challenge, right, of the two. And I think that I loved it how you talked about going back to the documentation to validate it's true. Is such a common challenge. Is people will their default, right, is to go to ask someone. Yeah. And which means there isn't a document, or they haven't trained themselves to go the documentation to validate. And it's weird because it's harder but easier. And if the documentation is not clear enough, it gets there. And that's a habit change, right? That requires that. And it's really difficult for many people. I think the irony is the move to remote work has made it easier if people have the documentation, right? Because it's harder to connect. I mean, yeah, you might have Microsoft Teams and be able to do a quick interruption, but once again, that's an interruption to that other person that's hurting their own productivity. right, during that period of time. And why do that if we don't have to actually do that?
And I think one more thing that not many businesses do is push the responsibility onto everyone to update that documentation. A lot of the time, it's just someone's sole responsibility. Whereas if something is out of date and you know the answer, go and update that and let everyone know that it's been updated.
Or even more, which is what we've had in the past, if for whatever reason there isn't a process or an SOP in place and you've asked the question, it's your responsibility to draft version 1 of what that should look like once you've been given the answer. And then it's just iterations to get to what is the best process. So again, it's like Dom said, it's pushing the responsibility onto those trying to discover.
Now, what's so amazing compared to a year ago is there's now ChatGPT, right? That description where you talked about writing a statement of SOP is actually difficult. I mean, to get down, especially if somebody doesn't have writing skills, to write out everything they're doing or do a flow chart to go through the process. Now you can ask and then adapt, right? Based on what's happening. Are you using it much in your businesses to help scale and help with this documentation?
Yeah, massively. We use it in multiple different ways. We use it for sort of content writing or sort of versions of ChatGPT. Content writing, standard operating procedures, sort of checking emails, supporting with sort of strategies, all sorts. And I think it's, literally across the board. And again, it's pushing it back onto the team when they start asking questions. It's, have you checked ChatGPT first? And these things. So it's an amazing tool. And we could get stuck into AI and where that's going to go. But I think it supports people and it allows people to elevate up and work on sort of more important things. If that can take a lot of the admin out of things, I think it's an amazing tool.
Okay, so yeah, and I agree. We could probably have a whole different discussion, right, on AI, right, and where it's going. But just for the sake of time, we don't have that today. I am curious from a business, and you don't have to give details, but I am meaning what the numbers are or what the answers are. But from a business success, how do you measure that today?
A couple of different ways. So naturally the numbers, because it's a business and it's not a charity. So what are we bringing in? Not gross, but net. And again, this is sometimes I think business owners can get a little bit hung up on turnover or revenue. Often vanity metrics get thrown around. And Dom and I are also guilty of it, by the way. When you need a little ego boost, you give the number of what the revenue's at. And the reality of that number is absolutely immaterial. The number that genuinely matters is, the net figure of what the business is actually making. So we do that on a month-to-month basis, report on where we are from a financial perspective, but also what our client P&L is. So what is our profitability of our clients? And we measure that by how much time our team are spending. So every single team member has to track their time and then allocate it to a particular client. That then kicks out what our rough percentage is per client. So that's the second metric. Team capacity, where are we from a capacity perspective? I think often businesses fail when they don't have a strong pipeline of recruitment and they don't have a strong sales pipeline. They don't marry the two together. And what can often happen is the team get overworked, staff get fed up, then they leave, and you're in a little bit of a pickle trying to play catch up. So staff capacity, we try to not let our staff's billable capacity, and that means capacity spent on clients, reach over, as a last resort, 85%. You should have at least 15%. And that is, if you were to go into a service-based business like EY or KPMG, you're probably looking at 90 to 95% of your time is billable. In the agencies that we run, I just don't think that's particularly fair. I think, we're a very different level and people have got to live. We're also hybrid working. Whether we like it or not, there has to be some allowance that the individual is going to probably go and put their washing on or probably, take a little bit longer for lunch. And that is, you've just got to accept that that's where we're at. So between 80 and 85% of their time is billable. And that will then mean that the staff are never, in theory, overworked. They're never overran. Every single team member is somewhat happy. So from a business performance perspective, that's what I look at in terms of a business's health. those are the sort of the key finance metrics that I operate on.
I think from my point of view, when it's how do we measure success, I think it's obviously that's the business metrics, but I think when we check in on a weekly and a monthly basis, it's very much based on gut feel between us. Obviously, they're the metrics of the business. When they're doing great, it's great, but it's very much, are we enjoying the work we're doing? Are we enjoying working with these specific business partners? Are the team, sort of our core team, happy? And are they, working to an optimum? And obviously the last thing, which I know you're massive on and we're both big on, which is, do we have time to, spend with our family? Do you have time to spend with your son? If we're doing all this work and you're not getting to see, Ralphie, then what is the point? There's the fluffier, more gut feel of how do we measure success, which I do think we do on a monthly basis. And when there is an issue in a business, even 2 months ago, we completely shifted a business because it was taking up too much of our time. But, it was very much a gut feel. This is taking up too much of our time. Let's shift it.
We never really once looked at the numbers.
We didn't look at the numbers because we weren't enjoying it. And now we are.
I would say it's always fascinating how when numbers are going well, you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just they're naturally correlated. And your guys are already, I appreciate you saying, you are investing in businesses that are ultimately going to generate cash flow. It's not a not-for-profit organization. And so as a result of that, right, you have to, if you're doing investments, you have to expect a return, that's ultimately going to get out of there. And plus it will not survive, right? It won't be a going concern if it's not ultimately generating cash flow through the whole basis of it. So I appreciate that. But then as I said, there's that soft side, right? If it's agonizing and painful, it's like, okay, we're just beating our head against the wall. It's insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again if it's not an enjoyable business. And I do find them quite correlated. Okay, so we have just a few more minutes left. And you already mentioned a little bit about measuring success on a personal side, a bit of this, you want to have joy and some set of, I'm not sure if balance, I don't think balance is ever the right term in terms of time, but focused on the right parts of your energy. Talk about what habits do you each respectively do, a couple habits perhaps that you do to help make sure that you get the best in your life.
Yep. It's probably a hot topic. Dom and I will always be competing, but sort of respectfully competing against each other, which is partly why we sort of remove any job titles, or so there's never that hierarchy, not so much in business, but certainly in our personal lives. So there's always a fitness challenge or some form of health challenge or some form of new craze that Dom and I will be, is competing the right word, Dom?
Yeah, I'd say competing, but pushing each other to do better.
Or have I just given away that I always want to win? So sort of trying to push each other. So for example, we've got a running challenge at the moment. We've pulled in a couple of friends, a couple of colleagues, and we're just both, for the whole month of October, it's who could run the farthest. But for me, a couple of things that I'll do, I need to make sure that I'm not out on the weekends completely going hell for leather with booze or with whatever it is, because that then just completely tips into the other week. And I think that shift does start to happen once you've got a family and when you look at other aspects of your life. So making sure diet's good, making sure I'm training regularly, at least 4 times a week, making sure that I'm getting enough quality time in with my family, but also my work is impactful. You could be working hardly at all, but so long as my work is impactful and I'm getting enough from it, from a personal satisfaction perspective, that's me in a good place.
How about you, Dom? Do you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think obviously the one thing that we do is obviously constantly push each other forward in sort of every area of our lives and hold each other to a very high standard. One thing we also do, which wasn't really mentioned, is sort of at the end of the year, going into the next year, is set goals, in different areas of our lives, not just business, but what do we want to do? Do we want to travel this year? What challenges do we want to do? I know Al's already booked 2 half marathons for next year, and I'm planning a marathon the year after. So it's breaking down, sort of reviewing the year you've had and then going again and taking a bit of a stock check and seeing where you want to go for the next year. And I don't think enough people plan in their personal lives. They talk about their work a lot, but they don't look at the different areas of their lives and really plan what they're going to do across the next year. So that's something that, really, really try and focus on.
Okay, this has been great. And clearly you're measuring success. Well, maybe I shouldn't assume. So then how do you measure success in your personal life? How do you know things are working well?
Yeah, mine is how much quality time I get to spend with my family.
How about you, Dom?
I think it's a gut feel in myself. It's am I doing things that I'm enjoying, and am I able to do the things that I love to do, which is, explore, go to new places, see family, see friends. If I could do that and have time for that as well as work and work out, I'm happy. Simple.
All right, a book that you recommend for our audience.
My recommendation would be The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters. I'm actually rereading it at the moment. So I've read it a couple of times before. Really, really good read around how the brain, the psychology of the brain reacts when you're sort of delivered bad news.
How are you, Dom?
The Compound Effect, if you've read it, which is very there you go. It's quite a short book, but it completely changed the way I think about how to consistently turn up on a sort of day-to-day basis and how that's impacts over 3 to 5 to 10 years. It's fantastic.
It is. It's a great book. That's why I have it on my shelf back here. It is a great way on that fact, right? When you work on things slowly and gradually build it up, it's amazing what you can help accumulate, right? And whatever it is, whether it's increasing your performance, increasing your outcomes, but the importance of the day-to-day movement, right, and going in the right direction, I think is absolutely huge. And not to get deterred when you have a day off or two, right, but to continue to go back, right, go through, because we're going to have those challenges, right, running, right, we might get a little injury, and it's like, okay, let's regroup, right, and find a way to get back to it as soon as we can by doing the right things. It's always an interesting process as we go through that. How can people connect and learn more about you?
Yeah, so you can drop us a connection on LinkedIn, Elliot Chapman, ELLIOT, and Dom Chapman, just Dom, on LinkedIn. Or if you're an agency owner and you've liked what we've had to say, Elliot, 2 L's, 1 T, @chapman.capital. Drop us an email, we'll be in touch.
Perfect. This has been absolutely wonderful to have you both on the Measure Success podcast today.
Cheers. Thank you. Cheers.
Absolutely. And to anyone else I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope my 2 boys are listening to this podcast because they're considering going into business later in their lives. And I think that you have been both a great model for how it can work. And so congratulations to the 2 of you for actually getting that done. And as we always like to say to our audience, wishing you the very best and measuring your success. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Measure Success podcast. We'll see you again next time to learn from the best. Remember to subscribe now to get future episodes.